You have to ask yourself, if someone gets sick at your wedding, what will that feel like to you? Full disclosure, there is no official CDC recommendation on what to do with respect to weddings during the COVID pandemic. However, there are some ways that you can modify your wedding that may make it slightly safer. First, I think you have to ask yourself, what kind of a wedding were you planning? How many people? Where was it going to be located? What setting? Indoor, outdoor? What kind of table situation were you going to be having? Were people coming from all over the country or different parts of the world? All of those things will differ individual couple to individual couple. Right now, the CDC is recommending that no more than 10 people gather in enclosed spaces or close proximity. But you have to weigh the pros and cons, the risks versus benefits. It's important to remember that some of your guests might be at low risk themselves, but they might be in environments or situations when they leave the wedding, they may then be exposed to people who, if they were to get sick with COVID-19, would be at high risk. Then you need to consider the people at your wedding. Are there older people there? Are there people there with predisposing higher risk medical conditions? And you have to ask yourself, if someone gets sick at your wedding, what will that feel like to you? When you make that kind of risk-benefit analysis and weigh the pros and cons, it can be complicated, but it can also become distressing, because obviously you always want to err on the side of caution when you're talking about people's health and well-being. Another question I'm getting a lot is, when would it be safe to delay the wedding until? No one has a crystal ball. No one knows what September will be like. No one knows what July will be like. But according to infectious disease specialists, public health officials, there is the thinking that this will not be a measurably safer environment until a vaccine is out. And that is still approximately 12 to 18 months down the road if everything goes smoothly and if a vaccine is found to be effective as well as safe. Something that people are considering is, are there ways to modify the wedding reception to make it safer? So the answer to that is potentially there are. Obviously, you can change seating arrangements. You cannot have a receiving line. You can not dance as closely together. In terms of eating and dining options, instead of having a buffet, you could have something where everyone is served their meal, potentially making it less risky by handling the same types of food utensils. But there are still some types of exposures that will never be completely safe. And that's right now the difficult part when you talk about these major life milestones. In terms of masks, remember, right now it is a CDC recommendation that the general public wear some kind of face covering, especially when social distancing is not possible. So certainly when you're talking about a situation like a wedding, masks would be absolutely recommended, which really brings in a whole different fashion element when you're talking about the bride and groom. In addition to weddings, people are so curious about all kinds of public places and social situations. We're talking about beaches, parks, malls, hair salons, nail salons, you name it. These are things that a lot of us think about when we talk about the summer season, and it can be really difficult to think of these things in the setting of COVID-19 pandemic. When you consider going to any crowded location, here's what you have to think about. Pros versus cons, risks versus benefits. How essential is it that you visit X location? And then you have to ask yourself, if the worst case scenario happens, is it worth it? Did I take all the steps I could take to lower or reduce or minimize risk? We know that a very large percentage of people, it could be as high as 80% of people infected with COVID-19 show no symptoms whatsoever. But those people can spread or transmit the virus to other people and make those other people very sick. It's really important to remember that we are in uncharted waters. We've never been through this situation before. It is appropriate that we put health and people's lives and safety at the top of our priorities list. And remember, it's not about me, it's about we. So steps that you can take to protect yourself are also protecting others. So covering your face, wearing a mask, hand hygiene, keeping distance from people, all really, really important, even as we attempt to go back to some modification of a normal or new normal life.